Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right. So really the round of applause goes to you all at 2 o'clock, post-lunch, second day of a conference to be here, so I thank you so much. I am coming to you as not a learned profession, as some of you might be or some of you aren't, in the KM space. There's certainly no class or course that I took in this. I say I'm an accidental taxonomist. I'm an accidental KM person. I had no idea that's what we were going to do or that I was going to be part of. When I started at Sodexo, I started on project roles. That's what I did. So I started on the HRIS side of HR, so the information security, technology systems and infrastructure, and we were moving our employees from a very decentralized payroll system to a centralized one, and that's how I started. And so that took me to the next project and the next project, and then hence the HR transformation project as well. And but I'll get a little bit more into that. But anyways, I'm actually originally from Guyana, South America. Anybody know of Guyana? No? Right? You know of Guyana? Good food. If the only thing you know about Guyana is Jim Jones, then you need to re-up on your knowledge of Guyana. Good food, one of the biggest waterfalls, and just a beautiful country. I came here when I was 5, so I'm still very much Guyanese, but I've been in the U.S. for a very long time. I should have known that I had KM sort of built within me. I was the only 7, 8-year-old I knew who had access to my parents' file cabinet and would organize it for them, right? Because they did not. They would just put things in there, and they would buy me the folders and the little inserts that you would put in, and I would label them, and I would get very angry if they did not label it correctly. So between the Type A personality, and that's what I did as an only child, I should have known that this space was sort of perfect for me. But again, when we started this project, KM was not even in the realm of what I was doing. I was in charge of HR to find our processes and centralize HR, because what you'll see on the next slide is how sort of spread out and works in the organization we are. So a little bit about Sodexo. Anybody familiar with it? Get out. You ruined my line here, because it says biggest company that you may not ever heard of. But for the rest of you who don't know about it, we're actually in many places. We are one of the top employers in the U.S. actually, and worldwide. And we comprise of 9 different sort of entities. We call them segments or markets. Just recently within the energy and resources. But if you're looking for it, it's food and facilities management, creating quality of life for our employees, our clients, students, parents, patients, seniors. But where are we? So we are in the cafe at your son's elementary school. We are in the coffee cart at your daughter's college. We're at your mother's nursing home. We're at the Olympics. We've been to the Olympics before. We're with the scientists in Antarctica who are studying polar bear migration patterns. I didn't know either. We actually supported the Columbia miners who were trapped. The 33, how much? I forget. So the individuals who were there. The rescue workers. We had mobile trucks with food, warm shelters for them to stay on site, that they did not have to leave, and so they were actively working the scene to rescue those 33. And then we are also in the Gulf Coast off of rigs. I was telling somebody the other day, we are also in the solutions business, right? So we had a group of people on the oil rigs who said, you know what, when the food gets to us, it's a little not so warm, and we're hungry, it's cold out here. And so we had a group of our energy and resources division who came up with a solution on how to get warm food in a helicopter flown across the Gulf of Mexico to an oil rig. So we are diversified in our portfolio and our offerings, and you can see, because of this diversification, you can see where they're having a lot of fun over there. I'm sorry you're not having as much fun. Exactly. So what we did is really based in the U.S. So when I talk about what we did, it's U.S. based and it's not enterprise wide. It was really focused on HR processes, HR people, HR management, and you'll see in the next couple of slides why we went into HR transformation, because that's important. Because we want to talk about metrics, and that is what drove us to HR transformation. So when in 2007, we did Hackett came in, did a study on our HR. And while effective, efficiency was low. And if you're looking at the world class of organizations, right, we wanted to be high on effectiveness, high on efficiencies. So what are the things that our peer groups like us, size-wise, offerings-wise, right, the other companies that look like us, what were they doing well and what were we not? So these are the things that we ranked lower on than our peer group. So integration of applications, time to in transactions, self-service automation was very low to non-existent. We had a frontline population. Our frontline population makes up 80% of our population of people. So huge group of people who were very highly dependent on their managers and HR to do basic transactional histories and work for them. Even so far to say, how do I look at my paycheck? They were getting it in the mail at the unit. The manager was opening it up and distributing it on a Friday, right? So that was like how archaic we were as an HR system. We had no real way to do managed reports either, right? So how are we doing? What are the metrics we're measuring against? What are we spending our time and allocating our needs against? So when you think about position management, when you looked at it, we were heavy in some areas, light in other areas, and the areas we were light, we were suffering in, right? So all of that coming together was why we went with HR transformation. But of course we had to convince the people with the checkbook as to why, right, we had to do it. So this is what Zach and so many other people have talked about. It's the ROI. And we were able to do a lot of analysis. We were able to tie it with money. Not that I'm going to be able to share with you, just because that's confidential within our organization, but I will do it based on percentage. So our goal was, one of them is a 10% reduction in litigation cost. So you saw how spread out we were. For the 9 markets that we had at the time of this project, we had 8 markets. Each of them had their own HR staff, rolling up to their own HR VP, SVP levels. So they had their own systems, their own processes. When we did things like a desktop analysis of all of our HR, we found that people were doing things like writing a new hire information down on a piece of paper, then taking that piece of paper, typing it into the system that we had, and then that system was being typed in by somebody else that was in HR, right? So you can think about getting somebody hired. That is exponentially long, right, if you're adding in these unnecessary processes. But they were being done at the units, and they were being done like that for years on end, and some of them, we had people in government who said, oh, well, we can't access these systems, we can't do this. And so there were, those kinds of things were holding us back. But these are the areas we wanted. We wanted, again, 10% reduction in litigation costs. If you think about, you had 8 different HR systems who were each doing 8 different policies, right? If you had somebody bringing a lawsuit against an organization, it was easy to find that loophole within a litigation that says, well, you're not being consistent across the board. You can't hold me accountable for something you're not holding person A who has a like role as me accountable for. So 10% litigation costs was high on our list, and savings. We also wanted to see 19,700 hours of savings within the units by the managers. That's how much time our managers were spending on simple tasks that we had not given the employee accessible information to, right? So we had held it back. There was some sort of perception of the employee was not able, they weren't capable, they were frontline, they weren't, their access to knowledge. Did they use computers? We don't even know. What is this, right? But we were quickly seeing iPhones and the use of iPhones during this time, right? That usage kept going up and up. So the managers started saying, well, you know what? If they can get on and shop at Amazon on their lunch break, then they could probably get on their iPhone and pull up their paycheck and not ask me for it and take away my time from clients. Because we wanted to make sure that clients also, they're our business, right? That's how we make our money. Okay. All right. So what we came up with was a service delivery model. It's important to know the service delivery model because this is where the KM Foundation supports, right? So the umbrella line, so we had business units and operators, we had HR business partners, they were going to stay the same. But all of those HR individuals who were now sporadically in different markets, who were only serving their particular markets, were now going to be centralized. And when you have centralized processes, you needed centralized policies, you needed centralized naming convention, you needed centralized repositories, right? So you had one group using SharePoint, you had another group using files on a computer, you had another group using filing cabinets, right? So we had I've got her name, but she said infobesity, right? That was somebody before me, right? So much information in so many places, and some of them were the same, but slightly different because we thought our markets were very different. The core of it is that HR is HR. It really doesn't matter if you are in a healthcare unit or if you're in a universities unit, you should be doing the same things the same way, right? So what we wanted to do is centralize transactions, value-added activities, strategic initiatives, but that meant a lot of work having to be done with centralizing those processes. We did desktop analysis, we did mining workshops, we did focus groups, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. So this was our methodology of implementation, right? We wanted to discover, define, develop, and deliver, right? Very basic. What's interesting is the discover and define period of our time took about 4 to 5 years. The develop and the deliver was in 6 months. And I'm not sure that would be the best, but it worked for us because we had to be very clear on what we knew, what we had. We had so many things in so many places. We had so many people in so many places, pieces of content in places, things on Mary's laptop, who had been here for 50 years, right? She was the only one who had this particular documentation, and so we had to get it off her laptop. So the discover and define time took us a long time. The develop and discover and deliver was 6 months. So you can see how that that played out. And what was our goal with that SDM model? So self-service and our tier 1 support. So along with knowledge management, we also brought all of the individuals who were in the markets, we brought them centralized and created one unit called the People Center. So it's all of our HR representatives. No longer did you have Mary at the university that I went to and she was my HR person. Now you could call any of the other 120 people in People Center and get any one of them as a representative, and they would be able to answer your question using the information that we collectively gave to them. And we were answering things uniformly at that point. That's what we wanted. That's the goal. So tier 0 is your self-service. That's me. I'm an employee. I'm able to go on. I now have access to personalized, relevant information. We did an additive security model. So you have your union employees, right? They are managed by your CBAs. They are seeing probably the least amount of information, yet still personalized, but the least amount of information is on their site. We had about 300 CBAs, so we did not put that into our knowledge management system because those change at a drop of a hat. So we left those out with the CBAs. And then we have frontline. Frontline is seeing more than union, so those are our on-staff individuals. Then we have our management level people, our managers of people, And then we had our HR. So HR saw everything on the portal. So we had an additive security model. So our tier 0 was, I'm helping myself, I can get online, I can see my information. Tier 1 is the support folks who were answering the calls at the People Center, and they were using, we did not do scripts, we did some scripts, right? So for the individuals answering the call, they had to say, hello, this is so-and-so, may I get your information? And that's where it ended. We did not script out any answers beyond that. The information that they would be able to pull up on their sidebar dictated how to answer the question, right? So, hi, so-and-so, oh, you need information on your tuition reimbursement, pulling up the knowledge article, and it gave, right? What does tuition reimbursement mean for your union employee? So they would be able to, based on the employee who was calling in, they would be able to see who the employee was, what level they were in the organization, what access to information that they had, right? And they would highlight for them in those buckets. So that's what we were doing. So we really wanted to save those managers at the unit by doing that tier 1 support. Tier 2 and tier 3 are our escalation points. And as you can see, the percentage of people going to those tier 2 and 3 should have been reduced, right? So by the time you're in tier 3, you have a major employee relations issue, and you're very specialized, you're being very handled, and there's probably a 3-month, 6-month period of time when that case is going to be closed, right? So, but these tier 0 and tier 1 are one and done. These are your people who are just trying to get information. All right, so what did we do for our project? We leveraged Agile. It was really important because not only did we do KM, right? So we made sure all the information was collected, it was coded, it was organized, but we also had technology to stand up. As everybody has said before, technology does not drive KM, right? We utilize Salesforce in full disclosure. So Salesforce is where our customer relationship management sits on. So that is our individuals who are answering calls. They're using the case management system. And then on the community side of Salesforce is what powers our knowledge. And then we have a layer of Visualforce pages and coding that presents the pretty stuff to the employee. But it was really important with Agile because we had never done it before. So we had to, this process of, we had our requirements and then it would do these sprints and we were able to test and validate as we went along. So that made it as effective as possible for those very rapid 6 months. So understanding the portal needs, and as you see, I don't have anything necessarily about KM in here, but this is the point in time that we engaged with enterprise knowledge. Zach and his team were instrumental because when we started, I told you I was not in, I had nothing, I had no idea what taxonomies were, no idea what KM was. I even asked Zach, I was like, is there a book perhaps that I could read up on? Because the internet is not giving me any sort of information. The book he gave me was a great book. It makes sense today. It did not make sense back then. It wasn't until Zach came and did a workshop with us, I was like, I've been doing that for years in the filing cabinet. I know what you're saying. Organizing information in a relevant way for people to understand. What we didn't know when we started the project is we were doing it from the business perspective. What did we want to push out to what kind of information did we want to push out to employees? What did the employees need to know? When Zach and his team came on, not only did they do the knowledge management strategy, but they also said, you really need to find out what your people are looking for, right? What is it that's important to them? So those are stakeholder interviews, focus group, card sort exercise. We had a group of people in the room, put a bunch of cards on what makes sense to you. Frontline employees, benefits and resources, no, they want to know about they want to know what sick time is, they want to know about their health insurance, and they want to know about dental. The words we were using, the cadence we were using, those were words that the business used. Very different from what the employees were used to. We did taxonomy workshops, frontline surveys, user navigation testing. We had individuals, not only we sat with them with a bunch of different navigation options. We also did eye tracking. So they would sit, we had a list of questions, and wherever their eye flowed, that's how we started to design and build out. You'll see what the employees were interested in. access to their employee handbook. No longer did we want to send them a big, chunky book. They wanted to be able to search jobs, view discounts. They wanted to chat with others, access training, safety information. But this helped us to define our scope, our needs, our gather requirements, but these were instrumental. These were our building blocks that we had to find our user base and what was important to them. And that's sort of the people I was talking about, right? Your union employees, your frontline employees, your manager employees, right? What is important to them and what's the information that they're lacking today? Prior to this, our frontline employees had no access to information. They had a website. It was a public-facing website that we could not put any personalized or confidential information on. So this was going to be leaps and bounds for our organization. So what did we want to do? One-stop shopping, right? So we wanted a portal, we wanted information that, again, you would not have to go to 20 different places to find information. That was important. Role-based, right? I need information for me, very user-centric. Real-time access to information. I work all day. I don't have time to call HR. I don't have time to get online. I don't have time to do these things. I will do that on my spare time when I get home. So 24/7 access. Additionally, I don't have access to a computer at home, but I do have a smartphone. So that was also important. So while we do not have an app, we just have our wireframes that will modularize to fit the screen size. So we are working on an app, but that's through Salesforce. And then just consistency of information, how it's presented, the navigation, the terminology we were using. Our portal's also completely in Spanish as well. So not only were we doing the same thing for the English side, we were doing the same thing for the Spanish side, right? Coming up with a Spanish dictionary, Spanish words, right? Employee self-service, for example, were we going to use that as a proper name, or were we going to translate that, right? Was it going to be like Coca-Cola, or we were going to translate employee self-service? So all of those things came into play. Our business requirements, very important. Again, there are business requirements, but these do not even capture the additional 300 to 400 functional development requirements. These were simply what did we want the system to do? What did we want the information to serve the purpose of, right? Who did it serve? We had associated user stories. User stories are vital when you're talking about KM, because you want to know the people who are absorbing the information, how are they associating it by the role that they play, and some people are playing multiple roles, right? We had user stories that I am serving myself. I am an employee, I'm serving myself. I want to know about tuition reimbursement. However, I can also be a manager who is helping to support my employee, right? And furthermore, if I'm an HR person, what is my role? Where's my, is there an approval process? Is there a denial? So same topic, same tuition reimbursement, but that user story helped us identify how that information had to be split up based on the person and what they needed. We talked a lot about knowing your organization, and you saw how diversified that organization was. So we had to spend a lot of time on gathering, analyzing, and then rewriting content. Because again, it was written for healthcare, it was written for universities. And so we created a system, it started actually on SharePoint, where we would gather all of the information from, we would have one thing of tuition reimbursement, we would have it from 8 different sources, 8 different flavors. And sometimes we had to get the business together to decide on what that one flavor was. Right? You want to do it this way, you want to do it this way, but we have to come together to a consensus, right? So part of our KM was making sure that we had control over the information that we were presenting. And so this just highlights sort of the way we went about doing that during the process. Favorite, taxonomy. And so this is the part that we needed help on immediately, because we had so much information, but how do we categorize all that information, right? What are the things we have, how are people going to find them based on what they're looking for? So we had topics, we had types of documents, right? Is it a form? Is it a document? Is it a training manual, right? So when I'm filtering as a user based on my role, and we also had role-based search. So a frontline employee was only seeing access to frontline things. A manager employee was only seeing access to manager things and not HR things. We talked about that added security model. But this is how we were able to do it. We had taxonomy, controlled vocabulary, I told you about that, right? If we're going to talk about tuition reimbursement, we have to talk about it this way all the time, right? It has to be labeled this way all the time. The metadata, what made up that particular thing, right? Was it a PowerPoint? Who made it? Who's the owner of it? Ownership is very important when it comes to KM. You have to have ownership, right? Somebody who is responsible for the curation of that information, the update in the information, and the continuous improvement of that, right? So every year, my team sends out a report to all of our KM owners, right? So all of our knowledge management owners, we send out a report to them and say, this is your aging report. You have not touched these things. Furthermore, statistically, nobody else has touched these things either, right? Is this information that's still relevant? Is it still necessary? Is it in here because you want it to be safe, right? This is not a repository of stuff. We want it to be usable things, and so that way we are able to refine our search, right? And pull away and pull back and delete things that aren't needed. So that improves our findability by having very specific tags and being strict on that tagging. My team is the only ones who mess with the taxonomy in our HR organization. Nobody else does. Nobody else recommends them. They can recommend them, but we are in charge of it. So that's how we control it and we govern it by only the 3 individuals. So the people on my team, they recommend. We meet together and we go through the taxonomy to see what kind of updates we need based on new or important information. Search continues to be a pain point. We actually ended up building search from scratch. So even things like stop words were not included in our search. Weighting is something that we're looking at improving as well in our search. So when you're building search from scratch, it's a tough beast. It's a tough beast. There's no Google playbook for that, unfortunately. But we are continuously improving it, and we're actually doing an overhaul of our taxonomy this coming spring. Just because we have so much more information that's been added to the system, and the tags no longer are relevant. They're too broad. Some of them are too broad and returning too many results. All right, so knowledge masters. These are not masters of knowledge. These are all the people that knowledge needed to serve. And I say that because you can see how that one thing we talked about, that tuition reimbursement, how it had to be spliced and diced. The other thing we talked about cases, right? So somebody calls in, HR is documenting that case, and that article is coming up. We also have quality management on our articles and on our cases. So when somebody calls in, it's, your call is being recorded, right? Periodically, we have a peer review that goes in and listens to those calls, right? Is knowledge being used, right? We don't want to know that Sam at the HR service center is using some sticky note or some information that he has saved onto his laptop. We want to know that he has gone in, he's pulled up the knowledge article, he's referencing the knowledge article, and then before he closes that call, he's passing that information on to the user. So for the future, I'm going to send you an email. In that email will be more information about this, and you can access it on the employee portal. Right? So we have, using the knowledge accessibility-wise and making sure that our QM score, so our HR representatives who are answering those calls, your QM score will be docked if you are not using the knowledge article. If you are using something you've stored, you've written, even talking to your neighbor necessarily will deduct your QM score. We do have areas where you can add to knowledge and recommend updates and change. It comes to our team. We have a very strict governance policy. If you are a content owner, you can approve your own knowledge articles, but nobody else can make edits to it unless you approve it. So we have governing workflows. I highly recommend those as well, especially if you have multi-publishers that are going to be contributing to your knowledge. We have content creators, so we have individuals who can contribute to the information, but they do not approve and they do not publish, because we want to make sure we control that tagging, and we want to make sure we control that the one with the S, not antonyms, the other one, right? Not the spice. You know what I'm talking about, right? So we want to be in control of that, because we want to make sure that the user experience, right, that they're getting back the information they're looking for, and not everybody is knowledgeable on how to do that effectively. So we do lock that down pretty tightly with governance. I wanted you to see where we landed, right? So this is our portal, and what are the things that we checked off and we were able to provide. We were able to do self-service. So that's a wireframe. That is the bare bones of what we were going to do. And then on the other side is how it looks, right? We're able to give information. Those big blue access buttons are one of our most popular things. People get access to. We have many other vendors, right? We have payroll vendors. We have health benefits, 401k vendor. But the employee does not know that. They don't care to know that. I mean, they know it from a perspective of, you know, when they get their statement, they see their 401k provider on it, but they don't have to go out to that website. They come to the portal, they're able to see real time what their 401k is making. That's usually sometimes not so good. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they feel like I'm going to retire at 80 and sometimes 200, you know, whatever the market looks like for the day. But those call to action buttons, but we have centralized and brought all the information in through REST APIs. Another is that we were able to use, right back to the self-serve, an employee doesn't need to even call HR anymore. They can push a button on the portal, they fill out a simple inquiry sheet, right? It collects their information, it stores it on their employee record, and it associates any knowledge articles that have like terminology, right? So I can say I submit something here and I say, you know, I need to go out on FMLA, I'm going to be pregnant. So when the case owner in the service center pulls up that case, they get to see the case and they get to see all the associated articles, because we have defined that vocabulary so well that it ties it together for the person doing the case. They don't even have to go find that article, right? It's all together. Also for the employee, which is great about this, is that they didn't have access to see, they had to call back into HR or whomever to see where their status was. So it doesn't matter if you call, it doesn't matter if you email, if you walk, if you send it by, you know, Pony Express, all of the details of your cases show up on your own portal, your personalized page, right? So is there an action I need to take, an action required, is it closed? And I can send things back and forth through this. When I had my twins and I went on a maternity leave, I never talked to HR. I used the portal the whole way on my phone. I got pictures of my, you know, the notices from the healthcare providers, and I just sent it to them. I uploaded it, attached it to my existing cases. They were able to see it. They gave me an approval. You know, you're all set. You go have your kids, right? Easy, easy done. And think about the time savings that is for our managers who no longer have to be part of that process. Here is an example of what we did in terms of, again, that controlled vocabulary and findability through taxonomy, through smart associations, through categorizations that made sense to the employee, through those workshops I told you about, through those user stories. You don't see any words up here that an employee would have to scratch their head and think about, right? What does this mean? What can I find in here? Very easy to understand. And then this one, I just wanted to show you that the audience segmentation. Told you about, right, we needed to know who we were serving. What are the different people? How would we take the one thing, and tuition reimbursement, I love that one, because it's different for different people. Based on your role within the organization, you're going to access this information differently. We have the one article, the tabs at the top delineate the individual's role or responsibility. If I'm a frontline employee, I'm not seeing any of the tabs. If I'm an HR person, I'm seeing all the tabs because I don't know as an HR person which of those I'm accessing at the time. Am I serving myself? Am I serving a manager? Or am I doing my HR role as it relates to this topic? This is pretty sophisticated in terms of this audience segmentation because furthermore, if I'm a manager and tuition reimbursement is different for me than it is my frontline employee, if I go to my manager page, at the bottom it says what your employees are seeing and what your frontline employees are seeing. You click on that and it gives you the article as it relates to your frontline employee so that you can give them the same message. Again, controlling the information, containing it in a single source. And then we talked about bringing in the REST APIs, right, from our healthcare provider, our payroll provider, our 401k provider. I never have to leave my hub. I can get all my information here. All right, and so this is our technology needs. When it all was said and done, this is all the things we needed. Content management system, we needed a search engine, right? How do I find the things that are in there? Knowledge management, right? What are the forms, the documents, the procedures? What are they? Case management, we needed to be able to track people who were calling in. What were their needs? The organization wanted trend reports. Where were we spending our time as an organization? What was our greatest issues? We have a robust case and case type. Call management, right? How are we routing calls? How are we escalating calls? What kind of calls are escalated? And then this last bucket actually only happened this January. The document retention and management. And it's only happened for our management employees. So prior to January, all of our files sat in files in big, and you saw the size of our organization, right? Just rows. There was on the 11th floor at Gaithersburg, there were rows and rows of file cabinets. And there were people in our organization who had been there for 25 years, their folders were this big. I mean, just and we put everything in it, right? There was no consistency. In a person's file, you had anything from a doctor's note to, I found pictures in there of people, who had since left the organization. It was just a random smattering. So what we did was we went with legal. What is the information we need to have legally in an employee's personnel file? Because what happened was we let the personnel files be run by all of those different segments. And what happened? They just were filled with any and everything in the kitchen sink. Oh, you have a question? I had that under control. I was the only one managing it. No, but we just had to go through that and make sure that we had an inventory of everything that was in there, and I guarantee you, most of it got trashed. Most of it got trashed. And then what we did, we had to scan it, and so we do have document repository now. So the same individual, right, the case owner who's getting that case in, they're able to see the file, right? HR is now able to see an electronic file for that individual. Their hiring letter, any sort of notices on their record, right? Their medical information is all there, and now we can source that as well. So think about it, right? Somebody's called in, I bring up their case, tuition reimbursement, I can see, oh, guess what? They have had, in the past X number of years, they have also had tuition reimbursement for these other things. They're going for their degree. Okay, great, I will approve it and send them along their way, right? So it's bringing all of that information from many different sources into one place. This is a complex makeup of our information systems, right? So you've got Salesforce that manages these things, right? It's role-based security, portal management, knowledge base, that's where our articles sit, our service console, that's where all the cases are, so that's managed by Salesforce. You're seeing all of the integration software that's coming in from the left-hand side, right? That's feeding your employee demographic data. Right, that's coming in from our payroll provider, and then our existing vendor systems, or payroll, benefits, and 401k. So it's all coming together within Salesforce. And so for our HR, they also do not have to go out to these other systems to get that information. It's all pulled together in the employee data record. Okay. So where are we today? these are our current stats. When Enterprise Knowledge came in, we wanted a 40% adoption rate. We were happy with 20% after the first year. It was really low. I mean, it was just, it took the organization a long time, their frontline employees, a long time to sort of get to that. One of our challenges within our organization is that our frontline employees, there's about 30,000 of them that go and come throughout the year. Especially when our schools and universities go out for summer, we lose that population of people, and we rarely get most of them back. They're gone, and then we have a new group of people. So if you're thinking about adoption rates, you're always going after the new person. What we found is we had to go into new hire orientation and be at the forefront of presenting why, you needed to sign up and be part of this, right? You can see our management employee adoption rate high, it's at 98%. Frontline now today is at 43%. Again, I told you after a year it was like 23. It was very low. And then our total employee adoption, just because of how many people are in that frontline group, is at 49%. The individuals, you can see desktop. Desktop includes a laptop, of course. Mobile, tablet is our lowest access points. But those are the total number of active users I pulled when I created this. But where are we going from here, right? So I said earlier, it's a journey, certainly not a destination. There are so many things to do. We want to have interactive content. We want people to be able to vote on things, like things within the scheme, because we know it's HR content. Not everybody's going to like everything that's on there. Collaboration stations, we want to be able to say, you know what? You're a cashier over here on the East Coast, over here on the West Coast. You guys should come together and be able to share best practices, share stories. Is there an awards, recognition for that particular vein of work you do? Social networking is the same. Chatbot, we want to be able to go and now in addition to opening up that case, by calling, now you can chat directly with a representative. The representative will be able to pull up those knowledge articles, send them directly to the person who's looking for the information. Based on keyword searches, sometimes that chatbot will be able to do it without engagement from an actual person based on current things. We're also working on some stop words, right? So if somebody starts a chat and they mention some words that harassment, discrimination, retaliation, any of these like hot button words, the chat session ends and it says, you need to go ahead and call this number immediately, right? And we advise them, and we do not continue a chat session through that way. But it's just another way for us to present information to the end user. My unit, my department page is really important. We haven't gotten here yet, but it's something I'm really passionate about. At the unit, things are important to me. Globally, around the organization, not so much. So we need to get to a better place of personalizing that information for people at the unit, right? When am I going to be off? I would like to integrate their schedules from Chronos into the system so that they're pulling up on their file and be like, oh, I've got to be at work, right? And I can switch a shift or whatever right there on their phones. Employee lifecycle workflows, right? I'm starting in the organization. What do I need to do? I want a checklist that shows up my first time I enter the portal. And here are the things I need to do. I want to be able to fill out some of the information that I can do, post-employment, post-first day, send it in. It stores in document repository, and we want to be able to do that. And then rewards for participation. We want to introduce some gamification. We want to introduce some points, right, for our super users or people who are doing that. Maybe get some points and do a store. So a lot of ideas to make that next-gen portal 2.0. What I will say about this is, again, we did KM in a very narrowed way in terms of just within the HR space. I'd love to see our organization take KM broader. Because I can see where there are parts of the organization that are struggling the same way we were in HR in terms of information overload, information inconsistency, information in multiple places. And so I can see that, but right now we don't have an overarching KM strategy. And with that, any questions or comments? Yes?
A moment ago you talked about customer satisfaction.
Yep. The adoption numbers? Yeah. So Yeah, so the adoption numbers are based off about 120,000 users, but I say that sort of moves. We do surveys on, so we have a closed call survey, so individuals who call in, they get a survey. Not on knowledge articles, it's really about the representative who answered their call and was, friendly, knowledgeable, that kind of thing. We do a yearly survey on the portal, on the information. And we do that survey 3 different ways. We do it for our managers, so the people who are managing people. How helpful is this information to you as a manager? That's our underlying question. To our frontline employees, how relevant is this information to you? What are you missing? What do you need? And then we do it for our HR representative. How are we supporting? Because they're our biggest users. Our HR department is our biggest user of knowledge articles, right? They're constantly using it to answer cases. But I would like to do something better with surveys. It's a very antiquated way we're doing it. I'd like to do it periodically, 1 to 2 questions on close of the portal. The way we're doing it is pretty antiquated, sorry.
You mentioned desktop audits. How did you avoid job panic? So
Change management.
Watching people work, and how do you avoid them from, am I about to be automated out of a job?
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah, so a lot of change management and communication came from our CHRO at the time that said what we're really looking to do is that we're just lifting and shifting. We're just making it that you may do something really well, you may do something that is causing you a lot of overwork. Can we come together and see what is the centralized thing we want to do and how to better do that? So she took it from it's a process that we are improving, not a person or a position that we're trying to change. And so she did it really from a process improvement standpoint. Go ahead, yeah.
I enjoyed your presentation.
Oh, thanks.
The discovery phase you said took 5 years. So was that planned or that just was kind of organically gathering information?
So the way Sodexo does it is we do 5-year vision strategies. So the title of the project was Horizon, with an HR capitalized. Yeah, it's very fancy. Horizon 2015. The portal did not go live until 2016 because of some so we had some technology constraints. We do have a very robust PMO and IT steering committee, so everything has to go through them. POP approvals. There was some concern initially about cloud-based to hold all of our employee sensitive information. Still was very new to us. And so part of our delay happened because IT security did a very thorough vetting of Salesforce in order to say, yeah, green light, yeah, you can come on. So that delayed us a bit. But that discovery phase was also, we didn't know what we didn't know. The desktop audit took a long time. And just the gathering of information where we had these repositories of people and they were unearthing things. I'm like, we'd just be shocked about some of the things that they were doing.
Were involved, and how long did it take?
Not very. So actually not very long. Zach may have to jog my memory. We did 1, 2, 3, 4 locations. 4 or 5 locations. Now my memory is back then, but 4 or 5 locations, and we met with managers on how that they, what information do they need, what information do their employees need, and then Zach went and did magic. I say magic, right? And we came back, and we also looked at our SharePoint, right? Because we had started to gather all of that information. So what is the information we had? What is the information they need? And where did those meet in the middle? I would say that took us 2-3 months. It was a solid summer. Yes.
Would you ever look at voice technologies?
So good of you to say that. So we are now going through an ADA compliance audit. And so some of that is kind of naturally occurring. We've actually already started with our, when you apply for a job, you actually don't have to fill out a form. So it's, capturing the information that you're looking for through your mic and your computer. We have not implemented that yet. I will say, because we're on Salesforce Classic, There is a Salesforce Lightning that has a lot more robust technology. When we did this in Classic, because of the customization, the strong codes, it's not extensible in order to change very easily. So a lot of the things like voice technology, like the app, I'd love an app instead of having somebody to go into their browser in Safari, type it in, save it to their thing. Those are all with Lightning. So we're hoping for that within the next 2 years or so, but we have to do a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, that's a lot of work to shift into that new space because it's very different than their Classic. But they weren't really, I mean, if you know Salesforce CRM is their bread and butter, communities, portal management, it really wasn't. When we saw what they were going to do for us for a website for our employees, I mean, you might as well have just been a DOS system. It was just, that's so rudimentary. It was it didn't even we could not even put our colors, right? We couldn't even brand it as Sodexo. That's how sort of basic it was. That's why we needed the visual force pages. Visual force pages are stuck within the design, and then the code that sits in it has to be very, the change structure is very deep. Yeah. Is there another question? Yes. Yeah, so we have not implemented yet. We are in the process, that's okay. We're in the process of building those requirements. I would say our legal team is very cautious on chat. They're very, very cautious, right? They don't know what kind of things are people going to bring up. What are we going to store? How long of a store history are we going to maintain? Is that like cases? What kind of, is it discoverable? What level of discoverability is it? So we haven't gotten into all of it, but that was thank you. That is our goal, is that once it's initiated, right? So Sam at the unit says, I feel like my manager is discriminating against me. Sam, thank you for letting us know. Please reach out to reach out to your HR representative at the following number, and then that particular thing starts a case. It starts a case on the back end, and it's flagged as like really sensitive. So if that person then does call in, you can associate it with, they started it as a chat, and here's the chat history perhaps that we have captured. So we're still in the requirements gathering of it. Salesforce is ready for it. Our system, actually, we paid for it, so it's sitting idle. It just doesn't have any of our structural guidelines around it. But I really would like our knowledge articles to help drive the information that is presented to the user who starts the chat, and the employee and the HR who's going to answer that question. All right, fantastic. Thank you all very much, and feel free to contact me.